凡事都要攞威。元彪以為自己打通街，其實係佢老豆荷包暗。
One man didn't just fight on screen, he rewired how the world saw violence, speed, and power. Bruce Lee didn't follow the rules of cinema, he broke them with his fists. Before him, fight scenes were choreographed like dance routines. After him, they became warfare. These are 15 kung fu movies that prove Bruce Lee changed combat on screen forever. And buried in the chaos, a director who watched Bruce move once and threw out his entire stunt team. No wires, no safety, just evolution. Let's strike first. Number 1. The Big Boss wasn't Bruce Lee's first film, but it was his first explosion. Released in 1971, it shattered every box office record in Hong Kong within weeks. Before this, martial arts films moved slow, theatrical, almost operatic. Punches were pulled, kicks were staged. Everything felt rehearsed because it was. Then Bruce walked onto that set in Thailand and refused to fake it. He didn't pull punches, he didn't slow down for the camera. Director Lo Wei had choreographed the fights like traditional kung fu cinema. Wide shots, slow motion, actors posing between strikes. But Bruce rewrote the language on the spot. He demanded close-ups on impact. He wanted the camera to feel the hits, not just see them. The crew panicked because no one had shot action that way before. Cameras weren't fast enough. Lenses couldn't track the speed. Bruce didn't care. He moved faster, hit harder, and forced the entire production to catch up. The final fight scene, where he tears through a ice factory with nothing but rage and a blade, it wasn't acting, it was something primal. Audiences had never seen anything like it. The film made Bruce Lee a superstar overnight, but more importantly, it made every other martial arts director realize their old methods were dead. The Big Boss didn't just launch a career, it launched a revolution in how combat would be filmed forever. Number 2. Fist of Fury arrived 1 year later, and Bruce Lee wasn't interested in being safe anymore. This wasn't just a martial arts film, it was a manifesto. The story followed Chen Zhen, a student avenging his master's death while facing racism and colonial oppression. But what made it seismic wasn't the plot, it was the fury Bruce brought to every frame. In one iconic scene, he walks into a Japanese dojo, reads a sign calling Chinese people the sick men of Asia, and proceeds to dismantle every fighter in the room with surgical precision. The choreography was different from anything before it. Bruce moved like water, then exploded like lightning. No wasted motion, no theatrical flourishes, just efficiency and rage. Director Lo Wei initially wanted traditional wire work and trampolines to make the fights look bigger. Bruce refused. He told the crew, if they wanted spectacle, they could find another actor. What he brought was realism, wrapped in myth. The fight scenes in Fist of Fury became blueprints. Jackie Chan studied them. Jet Li studied them. Donnie Yen built entire sequences around principles Bruce demonstrated in this film. The nunchaku scene alone, where Bruce spins the weapon with blinding speed before taking down an entire dojo, it became so iconic that nunchaku were banned in multiple countries because kids were buying them in droves and hurting themselves trying to copy him. Bruce didn't just fight in Fist of Fury, he changed what audiences expected from action forever. Number 3. Way of the Dragon wasn't just Bruce Lee's third film. It was the first one he wrote, directed, and starred in, and he used that control to do something no one had attempted. He brought Kung Fu to Rome and made the Colosseum a battlefield. The film followed Tang Lung, a country bumpkin sent to help family friends protect their restaurant from the mob. It was simple on paper, but Bruce crafted something far deeper. He structured the entire movie to build toward one fight, the final showdown between him and Chuck Norris. No studio interference. No compromises, just Bruce's vision of what martial arts cinema could be. The Colosseum fight became legendary, not because of flash, but because of psychology. Bruce choreographed it in 3 acts. First, testing. Then, escalation. Finally, respect. He and Norris traded techniques, adapted, and pushed each other to the edge. What made it revolutionary was the silence. No music, no sound effects, just fists, feet, and breath. Audiences sat in stunned quiet, watching two masters perform what felt less like a movie and more like a documentary of human capability. After Way of the Dragon, every filmmaker knew if you wanted a fight scene to matter, it had to breathe, it had to hurt, and it had to earn its place in the story. Bruce didn't just direct action, he directed philosophy. Number 4. Enter the Dragon wasn't just a movie. It was the bridge. East met West, Kung Fu met Hollywood, and Bruce Lee walked across that bridge alone, dragging an entire genre behind him. Released in 1973, just days after Bruce's death, it became the highest-grossing martial arts film of all time and introduced the world to something they'd never seen. Warner Brothers wanted a James Bond-style action film, with martial arts sprinkled in. Bruce wanted something else. He wanted authenticity. He fought the studio on everything. The script, the choreography, the casting, the philosophy embedded in every fight. The famous mirror room scene, where Bruce battles an army of reflections, wasn't in the original script. Bruce designed it. He wanted to show that fighting isn't just physical, it's mental, a labyrinth where you face yourself. The production was chaos. Bruce clashed with director Robert Clouse constantly. The studio didn't understand his vision. They wanted more blood, more screams, more spectacle. Bruce wanted precision. He wanted every technique grounded in reality, every movement teachable, every strike something a martial artist would recognize. The final fight between Bruce and the villain featured a style no one had seen before. Angular, explosive, raw. It wasn't kung fu, it wasn't karate. It was Jeet Kune Do, Bruce's own martial art, the style of no style. Enter the Dragon didn't just make Bruce Lee a global icon. It proved that martial arts could carry a Hollywood blockbuster. And every action film that followed, from The Matrix to John Wick, owes something to what Bruce built in that film. The Street Fighter hit theaters in 1974, 1 year after Bruce Lee's death, and Sonny Chiba didn't try to be Bruce Lee. He tried to be what came after. Takuma Tsurugi was brutal, amoral, and viciously efficient. A mercenary who killed for money, betrayed allies without hesitation, and tore through enemies with surgical savagery. The film was so violent, it became the first movie ever to receive an X rating in America purely for combat. No nudity, no profanity, no sexual content. Just bone-breaking, throat-ripping action that made censors recoil. Theater owners didn't know what to do with it. Marketing departments couldn't sell it to families. But audiences, they came anyway. Because Bruce Lee had already taught them to crave authenticity. And the reason the Street Fighter existed at all was because Bruce Lee rewired what audiences expected. Before Bruce, martial arts films lived in a moral universe. Heroes were noble, fighting only to protect the innocent. Villains were clear, dressed in black, announcing their evil intentions. Fights ended with honor, bows exchanged, respect given. Bruce shattered that myth in Fist of Fury when he screamed, destroyed, and refused to play by anyone's rules. He showed rage, desperation, survival. He showed what fighting actually was when your back hit the wall. The Street Fighter took that philosophy and pushed it further into darkness. Chiba's character wasn't a hero. He wasn't even an anti-hero. He was a weapon pointed at whoever paid him, and sometimes he turned on the person holding him. The fight choreography abandoned elegance entirely. No spinning kicks for style points. No prolonged exchanges where opponents took turns attacking. It was ugly, effective, and terrifying. Fingers driven into eye sockets until they popped. Skulls crushed against concrete walls. Throats torn out with bare hands. Techniques designed not to win points in a tournament, but to end threats permanently. Quentin Tarantino later called it one of the most influential action films ever made, citing it as a direct inspiration for Kill Bill's ultraviolence. He understood what Chiba understood. Bruce Lee hadn't just opened a door, he'd kicked it off the hinges. The film proved that Bruce Lee's impact wasn't just stylistic, it was philosophical. He didn't just change how people fought on screen. He changed who could be the fighter, what fighting could mean, and how dark cinema was willing to go. The Street Fighter was the shadow Bruce Lee's light created, and that shadow stretched long and blood-soaked across the next 50 years of action cinema. Drunken Master arrived in 1978, and Jackie Chan nearly quit acting before it happened. He'd spent years trying to be the next Bruce Lee. Studios wanted another stoic, powerful, lightning-fast warrior. But Jackie wasn't Bruce. He was softer, rounder, more comedic. And every film where he tried to replicate Bruce's intensity flopped. Then director Yuen Wu-ping had an idea. What if we don't fight Bruce Lee's ghost? What if we fight around it? Drunken Master became the anti-Bruce Lee film, but it only worked because Bruce had set the standard. The choreography was acrobatic, comedic, exaggerated, everything Bruce's realism wasn't. And yet, underneath the slapstick was the same principle Bruce pioneered: speed, precision, and technique grounded in real martial arts. Jackie's drunken boxing wasn't invented for the screen. It was a legitimate kung fu style, and the film showcased it with the kind of respect Bruce demanded for all martial arts. The training sequences, where Jackie's character suffers brutal conditioning, were a direct echo of Bruce's philosophy that mastery requires pain. Jackie Chan became a superstar not by copying Bruce Lee, but by proving Bruce's revolution had room for more than one voice. The martial arts film genre expanded because Bruce made space for evolution. Drunken Master proved that you could honor Bruce's legacy by refusing to repeat it. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin dropped in 1978, and it wasn't fast, it wasn't flashy, it was methodical, brutal, and educational. Gordon Liu played a student who survives a massacre and seeks refuge in a Shaolin Temple, where he spends years mastering kung fu through 35 chambers of training. The film was a direct response to Bruce Lee's philosophy. Bruce always said kung fu wasn't about showing off. It was about discipline, repetition, and understanding. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin took that ethos and turned it into narrative structure. For nearly 90 minutes, audiences watched training. No revenge plot yet, no final battle. Just a man learning to punch wood, balance on posts, and carry water. And people loved it because Bruce Lee had taught them to respect the process. Director Lau Kar-leung was a martial arts master himself, and he choreographed every chamber sequence to showcase real techniques, real conditioning, real progression. The film became a cult classic in the West, sampled by the Wu-Tang Clan, studied by filmmakers, and referenced in everything from Kill Bill to Kung Fu Panda. It proved that Bruce's influence wasn't just about speed or power, it was about honesty. Show the work, respect the craft, let the audience see what mastery actually costs. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin became a blueprint for training montages across all genres, and it only existed because Bruce Lee made audiences care about how a fighter became a fighter. The Prodigal Sun hit in 1981, and it changed everything about Wing Chun on screen. Yuan Biao played a spoiled rich kid who thinks he's unbeatable because everyone lets him win. Then, he meets a real master and realizes he knows nothing. The film was the first time Wing Chun, Bruce Lee's foundational martial art, was showcased cinematically with technical accuracy. Before this, Wing Chun appeared in films as background noise, another style, nothing special. But Bruce Lee had made the world curious. How did he get so fast? What was his base? The Prodigal Sun answered by showing Wing Chun as it actually functioned: close range, rapid fire, centerline, obsessed. Sammo Hung choreographed the film, and he understood something crucial. Bruce Lee proved that audiences didn't need wire tricks if the technique was real enough. So Hung stripped away the fantasy. No flying, no spinning. Just two fighters in tight quarters, exchanging blows faster than eyes could track. The training sequences were painful, repetitive, humbling. The final fight was claustrophobic, desperate, human. And it worked, because Bruce had taught audiences to value authenticity over spectacle. The Prodigal Sun became a cornerstone for Wing Chun cinema, directly inspiring Ip Man decades later. It proved that Bruce's influence wasn't fading, it was deepening.
凡事都要攞威，元彪以為自己打通街，其實係佢老豆荷包暗。
Number 9. Shaolin Temple exploded onto screens in 1982, and it introduced the world to Jet Li. But more importantly, it introduced the world to a new generation of fighters who grew up after Bruce Lee. Jet Li was only 17 years old when filming began, fresh off winning 5 consecutive national wushu championships in China. He wasn't trying to replicate Bruce. He was trying to honor him by being something new, fluid, graceful, acrobatic, but still grounded in real technique. Where Bruce was lightning and fury, Jet Li was water and wind. Different elements, same foundation. The film followed a young man who joins Shaolin monks to avenge his father, training through brutal conditioning, mastering ancient forms, transforming from boy to weapon. But what made it revolutionary wasn't the plot, it was the casting. Every actor in Shaolin Temple was a real martial artist. No stunt doubles hiding behind quick cuts. No actors learning 3 moves between takes and faking the rest. These were national wushu champions performing their own fights, their own flips, their own falls. Bruce Lee had demanded this level of authenticity on his sets, refusing to work with anyone who couldn't keep up. And now it was the standard. The bar Bruce set had become the baseline. Director Chang Hsin-yen shot the fights with long takes and wide angles, showing full-body technique without cuts or clever editing tricks. You could see the form, the footwork, the follow-through. It was a direct tribute to Bruce's insistence that audiences see the whole movement, the setup, the strike, the recovery. The training sequences alone were masterclasses. Jet Li balancing on wooden posts, punching iron plates, kicking trees until his shins bled. It wasn't movie training. It was documentary footage of what mastery actually required. The film became a massive hit in China, breaking box office records and creating a cultural phenomenon. Young people flooded martial arts schools. Shaolin Temple became a pilgrimage site, and Bruce's revolution had gone global. A new generation of fighters emerged because Bruce showed them the path. Be real, be fast, be undeniable. Shaolin Temple didn't just launch Jet Li's career. It launched the modern wushu film movement, inspired a wave of martial arts epics throughout the 80s, and proved that authenticity would always triumph over spectacle. Every technique on display carried Bruce Lee's fingerprints, and the world was finally ready to see them. Once Upon a Time in China arrived in 1991, and it proved that Bruce Lee's shadow stretched across decades. Jet Li starred as Wang Fei Hung, a legendary martial artist navigating colonial China, facing foreign guns with traditional fists, watching his world crumble while trying to save it. But what made it significant wasn't the period setting or the lavish production design. It was the fight philosophy. Director Tsui Hark studied Bruce Lee's work obsessively, and he understood one thing. Bruce fought with purpose. Every strike had intention. Every fight advanced character. Every battle revealed something about who these people were and what they believed. Once Upon a Time in China brought that mentality to Wire Fu, blending Bruce's grounded realism with Hong Kong's fantastical aesthetics. It shouldn't have worked. Wires and realism don't mix. But Hark found the balance by keeping the techniques honest even when the physics weren't. The latter fight sequence became instantly iconic, not because Jet Li flew, but because even in midair, every technique was recognizable, every movement rooted in actual kung fu forms. You could see the hung gar stances, the sweeping leg techniques, the precise hand positions. Bruce had proven you could be extraordinary and believable. Tsui Hark built an entire franchise on that principle, spawning 5 sequels and cementing Wang Fei Hung as China's cinematic hero. The film also tackled themes Bruce introduced decades earlier. East versus West, tradition versus modernity, identity in a changing world, the cost of progress, the pain of holding on to the past. Bruce Lee's films weren't just action. They were cultural statements wrapped in violence. Once Upon a Time in China proved that philosophy could carry an entire cinematic universe, and it paved the way for wuxia epics like Hero and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It showed the world that kung fu cinema had grown up, that it could be beautiful and brutal, poetic and political. And every frame, every fight, every moment of cultural tension, it all traced back to Bruce Lee's blueprint. Number 11. Fist of Legend hit in 1994, and it was a direct remake of Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. But Jet Li and director Gordon Chan didn't try to copy. They tried to evolve. The original was rage. This was precision. The fight choreography, handled by Yuan Wu-ping, took everything Bruce pioneered and refined it for a new era. Faster cameras, better angles, tighter editing. But the philosophy stayed the same. No wasted movement, no theatrical poses. just combat as conversation. The film's final fight between Jet Li and Japanese martial artist Yasuaki Kurata became a masterclass in technique. Both fighters adapted in real time, testing, countering, evolving. It was exactly what Bruce preached: martial arts as a living thing, constantly flowing, never static. Fist of Legend also honored Bruce's nationalism while complicating it. Where Bruce's version was pure fury against Japanese aggression, this version added nuance, respect between warriors, tragedy and conflict. It proved that Bruce's legacy wasn't just about copying his moves. It was about carrying forward his belief that martial arts cinema could be intelligent, emotional, and technically excellent all at once. The Matrix choreographers studied this film frame by frame. Its influence reached beyond kung fu into every action genre. Number 12. Iron Monkey dropped in 1993, and Donnie Yen brought something Bruce Lee always valued: innovation. The film was a Robin Hood story set in 19th century China, but the martial arts were anything but traditional. Yen choreographed fights that blended Wing Chun speed with acrobatic creativity, staying true to Bruce's principle that style should serve the fighter, not the other way around. One sequence, where Yen battles on top of burning wooden poles, became legendary for its practical effects and genuine danger. No CGI, no safety wires visible in the final cut, just performers risking everything for authenticity. That was pure Bruce Lee mentality. He broke bones filming his movies because he refused to fake it. Iron Monkey proved that spirit was alive. The film also showcased a young martial artist in a supporting role who would grow up to honor Bruce's legacy in a different way. A boy who would one day star in Ip Man and portray Bruce Lee's teacher. The circle was completing. Iron Monkey wasn't the biggest kung fu film of the 1990s, but it was one of the most technically ambitious, and its commitment to practical martial arts over wire-heavy spectacle was a direct line back to Bruce Lee's revolution. Number 13. Hero arrived in 2002, and Zhang Yimou did something Bruce Lee would have understood. He used martial arts to tell a story about philosophy, power, and perception. The film was visually stunning, drowning in color, operatic in scale, red for passion, blue for melancholy, green for youth. Each fight existed in its own emotional universe. But beneath the beauty was brutal honesty. Jet Li's character wasn't just a fighter, he was an idea given form. And the fights weren't just action sequences. They were arguments made physical, debates conducted with blades and fists. The duel between Donnie Yen and Jet Li in the rain wasn't about who was faster or stronger. It was about precision versus passion, control versus chaos, philosophy versus instinct. They fought in a courtyard as raindrops hung suspended, and every strike carried meaning beyond the physical. Bruce Lee built his entire philosophy around this concept: martial arts as expression of self, combat as conversation. Hero took that idea and painted it across an epic canvas with a $100 million budget. The film proved that Bruce's influence had gone global and grown stronger with time. Hero became a massive hit in China and the West, won international awards, and opened doors for wuxia films worldwide. Suddenly, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon wasn't a fluke, it was a movement. Western audiences who once wouldn't watch subtitled kung fu movies now lined up around the block, bought tickets in advance, and discussed the philosophy between fights. Why? Because Bruce Lee had taught them decades earlier that martial arts cinema was worth their attention, their respect, their money. Hero was the direct descendant of Enter the Dragon, proving that kung fu could be art, entertainment, and philosophy all at once. Zhang Yimou didn't just make an action film. He made a meditation on violence, a painting that moved, a poem written in choreography. And it worked, because Bruce Lee built the foundation, showed the world that martial arts weren't just fights. They were cinema's most honest language. Number 14. Ip Man exploded in 2008, and it closed a circle that began with Bruce Lee. Donnie Yen starred as Yip Man, Bruce Lee's real-life Wing Chun teacher. But the film wasn't a biopic. It was a tribute to everything Bruce represented: national pride, martial excellence, standing against oppression, and the belief that kung fu was more than fighting. It was dignity. The fight choreography, led by Sammo Hung, blended Wing Chun authenticity with cinematic power. Every punch came from real technique. Every sequence was designed to show Wing Chun's speed and efficiency, the same qualities that made Bruce Lee unstoppable. The 10 against 1 fight, where Ip Man dismantles Japanese karate fighters with relentless precision, became one of the most iconic martial arts scenes ever filmed. It was Bruce Lee's philosophy made visual, efficiency, adaptation, and overwhelming speed. The film sparked a global resurgence in Wing Chun training. Schools worldwide saw enrollment skyrocket. A new generation discovered Bruce Lee's roots and understood where his power came from. Ip Man wasn't just successful, it was necessary. It reminded the world that Bruce Lee didn't invent himself. He was built on centuries of tradition, and he honored that tradition by evolving it. The film made Donnie Yen an international star, launched multiple sequels, and proved that Bruce Lee's influence was immortal. The Raid hit in 2011, and it proved Bruce Lee's revolution wasn't limited to Kung Fu. Director Gareth Evans brought Indonesian silat to the screen with the same raw authenticity Bruce demanded. No wires, no CGI enhancement, just brutal practical combat, filmed in long takes. The film followed a SWAT team trapped in a building full of criminals, and the fights were claustrophobic, desperate, exhausting. Exactly what Bruce Lee pioneered, combat as survival, not performance. The choreography, led by Iko Uwais and Yayan Ruhian, showcased Silat's close-range efficiency, its emphasis on elbows, knees, and devastating short strikes. It was Wing Chun's philosophical cousin, and it worked on screen for the same reason Bruce's style worked. It looked real because it was real. The hallway fight alone, bodies slamming into concrete, bones cracking against walls, fighters gasping for air, it felt like a documentary of violence. No music, no slow motion, just the sound of fists connecting with flesh. The Raid became a global phenomenon, inspiring John Wick's fight design and influencing every action film that followed. Critics called it the best martial arts film in decades. Hollywood directors studied it frame by frame. Stunt coordinators rewrote their playbooks. But it only existed because Bruce Lee proved that audiences would accept subtitles, foreign fighting styles, and uncompromising violence if the technique was authentic and the filmmaking was honest. The Raid was made in Indonesia, starred unknown actors, had a tiny budget, and conquered the world. That's Bruce Lee's legacy, proof that martial arts transcend borders when they're done with integrity. One man from Hong Kong changed everything, and 38 years after his death, a film from Jakarta proved his revolution was still alive, still evolving, still unstoppable. Kill Bill arrived in 2003, and Quentin Tarantino didn't hide his influences. He worshipped them. The yellow tracksuit Uma Thurman wears, that's Bruce Lee's iconic outfit from Game of Death. The fight choreography, handled by Yuen Woo-ping, blended every style Bruce Lee influenced into one ultra-violent love letter. The philosophy underlying the entire film, revenge, honor, mastery through suffering, that's pure Bruce Lee. But what makes Kill Bill the ultimate proof of Bruce's impact is what happened behind the scenes. Tarantino screened The Street Fighter, Fist of Fury, and Enter the Dragon for his entire cast and crew before filming began. He told them, "This is the language we're speaking." Uma Thurman trained in martial arts for months, not to become a master, but to understand what Bruce understood. Movement is character. Every fight in Kill Bill is a conversation, just like Bruce taught. The Bride versus the Crazy 88, that's chaos versus discipline. The Bride versus L Driver, that's rage versus arrogance. Tarantino built an entire cinematic universe on the foundation Bruce Lee laid. And when the bride walks through that nightclub in a yellow jumpsuit, katana in hand, every martial arts fan in the world recognized the ghost walking beside her. Kill Bill wasn't just influenced by Bruce Lee, it was a prayer offered at his altar. It proved that 30 years after his death, Bruce Lee was still the godfather of action cinema, and every fight scene, in every genre, in every country, carries a piece of what he built. Bruce Lee didn't just change how fights looked on screen, he changed what they meant. Before him, martial arts were spectacle. After him, they were philosophy made flesh. These 15 films prove that his revolution didn't end when he died. It evolved, spread, and conquered the world. From Jackie Chan's comedy to Jet Li's grace, from Donnie Yen's precision to the Raid's brutality, every fighter who followed walked a path Bruce Lee carved with his fists. So if you felt that impact, if you see his fingerprints on every action film you love, go ahead and like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which kung fu film changed your life. Because in a world full of imitators, Bruce Lee didn't follow trends. He created them, and 50 years later, we're all still catching up.